Primitive money. Looking at primitive monies can be very helpful toward understanding what money is, how money functions, and even how Bitcoin operates. To begin with, I'd like to start with the story of rice stones on the island of Yap in modern-day Micronesia. And so because they weren't available on the island itself, that made them scarce and hard enough to be used as money, because it wasn't possible for people on the island to make them cheaply or easily. It was very difficult for them to find those limestones. In terms of the salability of these rocks across scales, you had different sizes and different scales of the rock that allowed people to conduct trade with these rocks across all different scales. But their salability across time was beginning to get compromised by the mid-19th century, thanks to an American-Irish sailor by the name of O'Keefe, who was shipwrecked on the shores of Yap one day and woke up to find out how that economy functioned and realized, well, this economy has a lot of very valuable coconut, and also they use this lime as a monetary system. And so after he recovered, O'Keefe went to Hong Kong and he secured a large quantity of dynamite and a large ship, and he went to a place that had a lot of limestones. So he basically figured out a way to print the Yap Island's money at a much lower cost than the people of Yap could print that money. Another very good story that I think is very instructive is the story of what are called the slave beads of West Africa. These glass beads were used as money in West Africa because West Africa did not have the technology for producing large quantities of glass beads. Again, money is whatever is the hardest to produce, as we said earlier. But then Europeans figured out that these things are extremely more valuable in Africa than they are in Europe. And so what they did was they started importing enormous quantities of those glass beads into West Africa. These lessons also help us understand why it is that metals eventually overcame all the other primitive forms of money. The only things that continued to be hard to produce were the precious metals, in particular gold and silver. Now, an interesting question here is, why gold and silver? Why not platinum and palladium? Because it illustrates the key point. Money is the hardest thing to make. It's not the rarest thing. It's not the scarcest thing. In other words, it's not about the absolute quantity of the particular commodity or money. It's about the increase in that quantity compared to the existing stockpiles. And so because those metals were only produced over the past few centuries, they lacked the large stockpiles that gold and silver had accumulated over thousands of years, and therefore they had a lower stock-to-flow ratio and a much higher percentage increase. So the stock-to-flow ratio for platinum could never really take off. We learned this lesson over and over again. What matters is not the absolute quantity of money. What matters is the ratio of the new production of money to the existing supply. What matters is the hardness of money.